Welcome to the first podcast of 2026. Dan, did you have a great
Yay.
Christmas?
Yes, absolutely. And New Year. Welcome back to the podcast. Lots of stories, lots of news and research. So can't wait.
And I was so excited that you were able to come to my little soiree at Christmas and to bring your mum, which means I've now met the listener. That's
Yeah,
very
sure.
exciting.
Yeah, it was great.
Okay, Dan, do you know what we've talked about more than any other topic? And don't say AI because that's a facile answer. Over the last 18 months.
AI detectors, Ray, of course.
Yes. And what have we said 26 times?
That they don't work.
Indeed. AI detectors do not work. But Dan,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if saying AI detectors don't work in the way that we've done it and using the examples and sharing the news stories and all of those different things has really convinced everybody, because I still know that some people are using AI detectors.
Yes.
So rather than us say it, I have brought along somebody who is way, way, way more erudite than either of us. Much smarter, much more intelligent, more letters before his name and after his name than either you or I will ever get. Dan, I want to introduce you to Dr., which is already impressive as far as I'm concerned, Dr. Mark Bassett, who is the academic lead for AI at Charles Sturt University. But to be honest, he is my cape-wearing superhero, because over the last year, I've been seeing more and more activism from Mark around AI detectors that culminated in the paper that we talked about last year, the Heads We Win, Tails You Lose paper, which is intended to be the very last silver nail into the coffin of AI detectors. So, Mark, welcome to our humble little podcast.
Thanks, gentlemen. Great to be here.
Where are you today?
I'm at Charles Sturt campus in Port Macquarie on mid-north coast, Biripi country.
So that's on the east coast of Australia, for those of you who are from the UK or from the US. And what's your weather like? I mean, it's winter in the Northern Hemisphere, so let's cheer up the Northern Hemisphere listeners.
Yeah, it's been raining a fair bit lately. It's probably 24, 25 outside, overcast, humid, not cold.
It's a gorgeous part of the world. I used to live up in Port Macquarie, so
Did you?
Going to Lighthouse Beach, and Flynn's is my kid's favorite beach in Australia. It's just so good up there.
They're still there.
I hope so. I know, it's amazing, beautiful.
Slightly eroded, but they're still there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, beautiful part of the world.
So Mark, we really want to talk to you about AI detectors, because our two-man campaign to convince the world that AI detectors don't work cannot possibly be effective if people are still using it despite all the times we've talked about it. And I know that you share the same passion that we do, but you've done more about it. You haven't just talked about it on podcasts. You've actually produced the academic evidence.
Yeah. When I started at Charles Sturt, mid-2023, we used an AI detector, and my first course of business really was advising our DVCA to turn it off. And we turned it off from January 1st, 2024. But recently wrote a paper with a bunch of colleagues who I'll name, Elise Hogg, Colin Webber, Kane Murdoch, Hannah Bornstein, and Bridget Pearce, and Wayne Bradshaw, called Heads We Win, Tails You Lose, AI Detectors in Education. And what we tried to do is document all of the reasons that we collectively thought make a really strong case of why these technologies have no place in education. Came out in October last year. It's got over 1,000 downloads and something like 11,000 views. It's currently sitting with a journal as well, so we're looking to get it published in proper academic spaces as well. But we've had a lot of feedback on it. It's a really interesting. People have reached out. I've had academic colleagues reach out from other providers saying they have or they're about to turn their AI detector off based on that paper. I've had a colleague who gave an overview of its contents to a provider in Adelaide who immediately turned off their AI detector. I've had students contact me who are under investigation at other institutions, almost all of them being found guilty purely on the score, on the number, on no other evidence. And there's a lawsuit in the US that I won't name, and I've been in contact with the lawyer there for the plaintiff who's suing their school for the use of AI detectors. So it's had some reach.
Yeah. the tale of AI detectors has been a cat and mouse game. It just seems to be that every time that somebody says, oh, this doesn't quite work anymore, another AI detector comes along and says, yeah, but we've solved all those problems. Meanwhile, the students, they know what to do, don't they?
They do. I think the initial phase was obviously Gen AI hit the world, and then turned on their AI detector for a number of providers. I'm going to assume a gesture of goodwill, and we all had access to it. Unfortunately, AI detectors, not simply Turnitin's product, were completely uncritically adopted. It wasn't possible to critically adopt AI detectors because there was no evidence around their effectiveness that was available. And even now, you've got AI detection companies, and I've talked about this at conferences, where they will have a media release with claims of effectiveness. They'll have results of internal testing, but the things they don't have are, they don't give public access to the testing algorithm, public access to the data they used. They can't. They're student papers. They're not independently tested by third parties. There's no benchmarks. There's no technical reports. There's no sort of statements of data provenance. None of these things are provided by AI detection companies. And if you were a research student and you were going to build an AI detector and I was your supervisor, and you said, the method I'm going to use to see if this thing works on current student papers is I'm going to test it on papers written before Gen AI. That's fine.
Yeah.
But what you'd need to do is demonstrate and show that there's a comparable relationship between the papers written before Gen AI and papers today, because the testing of effectiveness you're doing is not on the data set of interest. That's not done either. So Turnitin, for example, not singling them out. My issue is as much with any AI detector, no matter who made it, tested their AI detector on, I think it was 37,000 papers, don't quote me on that were written before Gen AI to guarantee there was no Gen AI in them, right? Brilliant, good move. And there's an accuracy that they state comes out of that. How much that relates to papers written today, where everything we're seeing in digital media has AI all over it, it's going to influence how people talk, how they write. That's already happening. We can see that happening. So the idea or the underlying premise is, if anything written today is directly comparable to the papers written before Gen AI, and there's no evidence for that.
I know exactly what you mean there, because I remember one of the early signs of all of these magical signs that some AI had written something. One of them was the use of the word delve.
Yep.
And then what then went off in my head is, every time somebody used the word delve in a conversation, my AI detector ping went off. And I had to kind of go, no, people do use it in real conversation. And so I guess it's the same, isn't it?
There's an image I'll have to find so we can share it with the listeners that shows the use of the word delve in, can't remember if it was on Google searches or I think it was documents. And it went through the roof on this graph. It goes up really high towards the right, except the graph ends the year before ChatGPT came out. So the use of delve went through the roof before Gen AI was released.
So all of those things that we know as being tells of, and I say no, we know that if somebody uses an M dash, then it's written with AI. All of those things are about as realistic as evidence as a police car following somebody on the road and they're moving around the lane a little bit. It's a suspicion. It's not a thing. It's not evidence.
I mean, firstly, those characteristics of text, those linguistic markers, are in Gen AI outputs because they were trained on human writing. That's a point worth pondering. Evidence is the key word in what you're talking about. And we were chatting just before around, well, can you tell if you're reading a piece of work that Gen AI was used in drafting it? Most of the time, I think I could. That's very different to using that as evidence to instigate an academic misconduct investigation, or being able to use that against a student. If you think Gen AI is used, good for you. It stops there. You can't then grill a student or start questioning them because you have a hunch. That's not fair. It's not procedurally fair. It's not transparent.
Yeah.
And that's not how academic integrity processes work. They're not arbitrary like that.
for the listeners out there and myself who are not involved in that, I was a K-12 teacher. So, I can kind of see it from that angle, where we had one of our, I don't know if you listened to an episode we had a while ago, Tale of Two AIs, I think we called it. And it was a teacher from the UK who had to sway the students that were kind of 0 marks for a high stakes like HSC level test in the UK, like the GCSEs. And all they had was like the marker from whatever checker it was. I think it was turning in that particular time, but they had like a particular percentage, and there was no, they didn't know what it was. They had to go to the kids. It's very kind of black box orientated. From a kind of school area, I can kind of see how that kind of works. But when you talk about academic integrity in further education, higher education, well, what is the process around that? Does it go to a board if somebody's found to plagiarize them? How does that work? And where does AI fit into that in conversations?
I mean, firstly, you've got the higher education standards framework that talks about having fair processes. Students have rights, things around informing students of what you're going to do with their data if you're going to send it to an AI detector or through a standard kind of similarity detector. That's a third-party tool. Do they give you permission to do that? So it all comes back to policy as well. And it depends on institutional policy, but essentially academic staff normally would make an allegation. If they believe they have sufficient evidence, that would go to at Charles Sturt, that goes to a central academic integrity unit. It's reviewed by academic integrity officers who make a decision of whether or not there's a case to answer and to proceed with it, or whether there's not.
Right.
If there is, then it's investigated by the academic integrity officer. And at Charles Sturt, they present a case, they make a recommendation, and then that goes up to a deputy dean, an academic, who makes the final determination. That's for lower level misconduct. For misconduct that has more severe penalties, at our university, it goes to a committee. After the integrity officer does the investigation, they make the recommendation, and then that goes up to a committee with 3 or more people, staffed by an integrity officer, a member of academic staff, and a chair, and then the committee makes a decision. And for the worst kind of misconduct that would involve getting expelled from the university, I believe, or perhaps revoking a degree, our vice chancellor makes the call there. But the investigation process is the same. It's just depending on how serious the penalty is, we have more oversight.
And that seems quite humanistic. We'll say I've submitted something for Charles Sturt Uni or whatever, and then it gets caught then by an AI detector or whatever. Then where does that part appear? Does that appear to you as a lecturer? Where does that appear in the process, or does it appear further on down the lines?
So most universities require students to submit through Turnitin through their LMS. So as an academic, I'd go into the learning management system, I'd open your essay, for example, and it would give me a Turnitin report. So you've got your standard similarity, text matching that you can go and check the website or the book and show that the quote didn't have quotation marks, et cetera, et cetera. But also the AI detection score. So then you would submit the essay and the Turnitin report to the integrity unit. The integrity officer would pick that up and say, okay, this has an AI detection score of 81 across most of the paper. And then they'd start a investigation and start talking to the student. The issue is that once that student's under investigation, they have the right to say nothing. So if all you have is an AI detector score and you're investigating me as a student, I wouldn't say anything. And if you found me guilty, I would appeal it, go to the ombudsman and keep appealing until you drop it, because you have no case whatsoever. It's not up to me to prop up your shoddy case because all you have is an AI detector score. Now, there are circumstances where academic staff, and importantly, this isn't part of an integrity investigation, they can ask students questions about their work. They're within their rights to ask students questions that can help the academic determine whether the student has met the learning outcomes. If that student can't answer those questions, you may be able to use that as evidence in an integrity investigation. But an academic cannot simply sit down and say, I don't think you wrote this, prove you did. At that point, that student's under investigation and they don't have to say anything.
Yeah, okay.
And if all you have is an AI detector score, if that's it, and your student chooses to not respond, on balance of probabilities, you've got nothing.
So there's some faults in the system, and one of which, very obviously is, I think you wrote this thing with AI because that thing over in the corner, the little black box with blinking lights, using AI says that you cheated, but with no demonstrable evidence.
In no other system would an opaque black box be allowed. It's absolutely ridiculous that this is used in academic integrity investigations. And then there's the argument that, it's just used as a red flag. We just use it to initiate conversations. But
Mm.
that funnel's not fair. You're not talking to students about their work who have more expensive Gen AI models, who are more technically minded, who have computers at home, who have a different socioeconomic background, who grew up with computers like I did. It's not a fair funnel on the way in. And there's a really great analogy here to lie detectors where they work on some people, but they're fallible. Therefore, you can't use them in court.
Mm.
You can't use them in court if you pile on a bunch of other evidence as well. You can't use them at all. It's the same with AI detectors. They have no place. You don't get stronger if you pile evidence on top of them. That's just confirmation bias.
Okay. So why don't we just rely on other techniques? Like, I've heard academics say, I can spot AI writing a mile off. And I think I've said that. I'm reading a book at the moment where I'm pretty sure a lot of it is AI written. So why not just go in that direction instead?
I think the problem is that AI generated anything that Gen AI could produce could have plausibly been written by a human, right? Unless you're in, year 3 in elementary school, sure. We know you didn't write this, right? This is like a 8-syllable word. You don't know what it means. But in higher education, they're not mutually exclusive sets. AI generated text and human written text are not mutually exclusive. Their Venn diagram overlaps more than the Olympic rings. You can't separate them. But that's the underlying premise of AI detection is this false dichotomy where there's AI written work and there's human written work. That's not true. A lot of the work we're seeing, a lot of my work that I do every day, including today, is an amalgamation of those two. And what comes out the end, I couldn't tell you which bit was AI or not. I couldn't tell because it's just a mashup. So what are you actually trying to detect? Unless it's just a copy paste job. And then in that case, you're not penalizing the right kind of students here.
Yeah.
So true, yeah.
But that's also like the drug cheat analogy we were talking about earlier, right? Where, staff say, or members of the public, parents, lots of people say, I can spot Gen AI, but anyone can spot a drug cheat running down the track with a needle hanging out of their arm. That doesn't mean you can spot drug cheats. You can't then make that general statement and extrapolate it that you can spot all of them. But then the question is, well, sure, Mark, but shouldn't we punish the person with the needle in his arm? And the answer is that question is moot. If you are running a race where people can cheat without being detected, such as in the case of AI detection, and there's a couple of people who get caught because they've got the giant needle in their arm, your race should not be run. It is not fair. The question of shouldn't we punish the person who's cheating is irrelevant. You shouldn't even be having the race.
I remember on the podcast talking about the research that came out from University of Reading. It was the one they talked about as the real world test. I think they used the phrase Turing test, which is kind of what got the headlines going. And it was basically they had a psychology assessment, and into the psychology assessment alongside the work of real students, I think about 1,000 real students, they fed in 33 AI fake students assignments. And what was fascinating is because the people involved in the process, the academics that were marking the work, didn't know that was happening. They weren't looking for it. And I think only 1 or 2 of the papers were spotted. And so it kind of disproves that point of, I can see it. It's almost like if I follow the rules of good academic writing, I'm more likely to look like I've written with AI because I'm going to be more consistent and, do the phrases it's looking out for. It just, it's a tricky one. I mean, the other one I worry about is the whole false positive thing. So that's it. When a detector says this student wrote this paper with AI, and I know that the percentages are pretty low. People talk about like, oh, it's only 1%. But I know an academic who teaches 600 students in their class. So every time there's going to be at least 6 students that get accused of cheating when they haven't used AI.
The issue is that you don't know it's 1%.
Right.
So when these companies are testing AI detectors, they have a few sets of papers. They have a bunch of papers that they know there's no Gen AI in, which is why they use papers from before Gen AI. And they have a bunch of papers that are Gen AI written, right? And then they test them. They know the total number of papers. They know the total number of Gen AI papers. They know the total number of human papers. And that's how they work out their 99% false positive rate. That's only useful if you know what percentage of papers are AI written and what percentage of papers are human written. So then go into a real classroom with 100 students and you're using a Turnitin AI detector that has a 99% false positive rate. That does not mean for your 100 papers that those metrics apply. It only applies in the same way if you have the same distribution. If 2 of your papers are AI generated and 100 are student written, it doesn't work like people think it works. And also take into account that it's trained on papers that are not today's student papers. Combine those 2 things and your 99% false positive rate means nothing in practice.
Okay. So if I had a 50-cent coin, at least I know that half the time it's going to come up heads and half the time it's going to come up tails. What you're saying is with AI detectors, we don't even know what those proportions are.
I'm saying if you're just going to completely abandon due process, use a deck of tarot cards, they're cheaper.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, but surely we should just keep searching for the Holy Grail. There must be an answer out there somewhere. I mean, we can't let this disrupt everything, can we?
I think that's the key thing. If we step back, is this prevalence, this idea we're seeing amongst educators globally, that if we can just find that magic piece of technology, which surely there has to be, job done, problem solved. Watermarking's being promoted, process tracking's being promoted, writing under authenticated conditions, AI software that asks students questions after they've done the assessment. All of these things are alleged technology solutions that don't solve the problem. And the problem has been long-standing and existed well before AI. And that's the validity of assessments. I did a graduate certificate in tertiary teaching remotely. They posted it. I printed it out, printed out the subject outline, wrote the essay, printed that out, sent that off. They sent it back with handwriting on it. They had no idea who did that work. None. That hasn't changed. Gen AI has just put that on steroids. Gen AI, sorry. And a colleague of mine at Macquarie University, Kane Murdoch's, his phrase is that Gen AI has removed plausible deniability around that for institutions. It hasn't created this issue. This issue was always here. It's just amplified it at scale.
And reduce the cost of that, because before you used to have to pay an essay writing service to write it for you. Now you can...
Yeah, or your brother, you know.
Yeah.
Or your neighbor. Anyone could have been doing that work. You can see this in discussions online. You can see it in discussions on LinkedIn. You can hear it at conferences where there's always technology companies who see a market and they're trying to sell us stuff, and that's their right in a capitalist society. Good for them. But that doesn't mean we need to uncritically adopt it. And the issue is that contemporary assessment practices aren't compatible with contemporary writing practices. That's the issue.
Yeah.
And all of the advice that comes out of TEXA and other higher education leaders here in Australia especially is that this isn't a technological fix. There is no technological solution coming to address this.
It's interesting when you say AI didn't create the problem. I used to have AI helping me do my homework in high school, but the AI was Anthony's intervention. My brother, Anthony, used to help me and correct my homework for me.
I thought you were going to say Clippy in Microsoft Word.
Oh, gosh. I think we're getting back to Clippy times at the moment, the way that...
Have you ever met someone that clicked yes to when that thing asked you, looks like you're writing an email, do you want some help?
That's true, actually. I just remember spending hours changing it to the different personas, like the professor and the little dog and things like that. It was so cool.
Dan, I know from my time working with Dan, Mark, that Dan would always find the distractions in work rather than the real thing. Okay, so we know they don't work. Your paper very clearly lays out lots of reasons why it doesn't work. I think about my kids. When my kids were young, they'd come downstairs and say, hey, Dad, we need to go to bed late tonight. Can we stay up? And if the first 2 arguments didn't work, the third argument was not going to work, and the 5th, 6th, 9th, 12th argument didn't work. But if somebody takes your paper, it's got all the arguments in it. They can work out which ones to use with their peers and colleagues and leadership around them to try and get the argument at least discussed in a smart way about what should we be thinking about doing as an institution with AI detectors. Now, I'm really interested in, you've then moved beyond that work and you've done a lot of work around frameworks for integrating AI into education. So rather than the crossing garlic version of keep it away from us is, oh, actually, let's be positive about it. It can do good things for us. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your secure framework?
Yeah, the secure framework came out of a few things I was seeing online that were not at our institution, but some others in Australia and overseas that were advising staff to do their due diligence. Before using Gen AI, you need to do your due diligence and check that these tools are safe, check that their data is stored where it should be according to your local rules, check that it's not in bed with a hostile third party or foreign government, which just seemed like complete madness to me. Staff don't have the time or the training or the expertise to do these kinds of things. I mean, that's a really dedicated technical role to do that risk assessment.
Mm-hmm.
Very few people have the skills to do. And if you can't do that, then you don't use Gen AI. That was insanity to me. So that's where Secure came from. I thought, let's think of the absolute worst case scenario where everything I put into any random Gen AI tool, Secure is tool agnostic. Let's pretend everything I enter in is being sent to a hostile foreign power. Great. What can I put in where that doesn't matter? So if I ask it how to make butter chicken, the hostile foreign power does not care. That's not going to help anyone do anything, right? So secure is an acronym. S is security credentials, E is ethical work, C is confidential information, U is use of personal information, R is rights protection, and E is evaluation. And the first 5 talk about what you put in. So don't enter security credentials into Gen AI. Don't enter them anywhere where you don't need to enter them. It's just good general advice. Are you using it ethically? Now, this isn't about environmental issues associated with Gen AI tools. It's not about labor issues involved in the training. It's about, are you producing information that's going to harm someone? It also includes information. It also includes prohibiting entering First Nations information or First Nations cultural knowledge, and generating any First Nations cultural knowledge. So you can't ask it to generate First Nations artwork, for example, completely inappropriate. Confidential information is fairly self-explanatory. Personal information or anything that could be used to identify you as a person, don't enter that. Rights protection, so don't enter copyrighted work of other people unless you have explicit permission to do so. And this framework staff can enter anything that's provided to students like subject outlines or anything that's publicly available. So if you answer no to am I entering any of those 5 things, then you come to the last question, which is E, which is evaluation of outputs, which says or asks you, are you going to use the output of Gen AI without evaluating it, without checking it for accuracy, for bias, et cetera, et cetera? If the answer is no, you're not going to do that, then your proposed use case is approved. You don't have to tell the university what it is. You don't have to tell it what tool you're using because it doesn't matter. If you adhere to all those components, the risk to you and to the university is so low that it doesn't matter. It's very similar to websites. You don't have to ask IT if you can visit a website, right? You have policies around how you need to behave, what kind of information you can access and what you can do with it. And then you have a web browser. Combine those two and don't do anything stupid. It's the same permission and freedom with Gen AI where you can use any tool you like. It doesn't matter if you use, what's the one that came out of China, DeepSeek? There were some concerns around that. I don't know whether they were founded, but under secure, it doesn't matter if they're founded. It doesn't matter if everything you enter in is taken and read. It doesn't matter because you're not doing anything that could be harmful to you or the university.
Yeah.
We were going to make a student version, and it's still something I'm sort of pondering, but the evaluation one is the problem there because students don't have the expertise to evaluate things for accuracy in all cases. So it's really easy to say, check your outputs, but if you're a first year chemistry student, good luck with that. That's why you're at university, because you don't have the capability to do that kind of assessment of the information that's coming out of it. I also considered putting a D on the end for disclosure, but personally, I think requiring people to disclose AI use is going to age really badly, and we won't be talking about this soon. I've got colleagues, one of which over at Oxford, Kelly Webb-Dave, is a really strong proponent of the idea that it's absolutely none of your business whether Gen AI is used, because it's used as a translation tool for people who have certain neurodivergent conditions or aren't first language speakers, English as a first language speaker, and whether or not it's used in the production of, say, a piece of information. We're not talking about in assessments here, outside of assessments, has nothing to do with you. If I'm vouching for the output and my name's on it, end of story. It doesn't matter if Gen AI was used. Why would that matter? Do I also need to tell you who I consulted, who I ran the reviews past, who did the draft editing?
So true.
Why would that matter?
Yeah, that's really interesting because as you're saying that, I was thinking, I think differently, but I think differently about image and video because I think of the downside of it being used to fool people. I don't think that about a text at all. And I wonder what's going on in my head that makes me think an image or a video produced by AI should be watermarked, but it's okay for text.
It's a similar kind of thing. Well, it's the same thing, isn't it? It's like I was making me think when Mark was talking us through that about the facial recognition the Microsoft used in the US, where it was biased, wasn't picking up people in certain kind of races. So they said, okay, we're not using it at all because there's an error factor here, so nobody's using it. So the images and the video elements are like, I suppose, more tangible to understand, but it's exactly the same as the text, right? There's no difference.
It's your intellectual property. The facial recognition features that are used by cameras when you walk into Bunnings in Australia. Can you believe they do that? That's your proprietary information. You own that biological data. They don't get to just take it and put it on. Well, sorry, they shouldn't be allowed to just take it and put it on their servers and do whatever they want with it. That's my information. And there needs to be some kind of consent provided. Within reason.
This conversation has blown my mind, absolutely blown my mind. Because we've looked at the research, we've read a lot of the stuff, we've looked at the headlines. This has gone way beyond the headlines and really, the future thinking that you provide into this discourse, Mark, is amazing. It's like, I think this is going to be a great episode for people to listen to because my brain is exploding here, right? I don't know about yours.
You wait till the full AI-powered browsers and things like that come out, where they provide you with an amalgamation of sources. So instead of going to Google and typing something in and it, ignoring the AI summary at the top, it points you to the website, and then you go to the website and you read the website. It reads them all for you. And then it generates a new page that you read, except that page it generates is custom made for all three of us. So they're completely different. So based on, Dan's credit card history and where he drives his car, when he asks it about the Republican Party in the US, the answer is different. So we're going to have personalized versions of news and events where facts are personalized. That's already starting to happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Wow.
And ChatGPT's just announced ads coming out in their free version.
That's right. They did, didn't they? Yeah.
Well, it's really funny. I've been doing some work with AI recently where I've noticed it's got more and more into understanding the way I work and my preferences, and then is responding in a way that matches my preferences. So for example, I've given AI instructions about how I like to write material and how I like to think about things and the use of storytelling. It's now using storytelling back at me when it's telling me information I'm asking for. And it's like, wow, it's that personalization. I mean, if that then turns into delivering adverts in a style that it knows I will more respond.
Well, there's a caveat that says the advertisements, for example, won't come out in the output. So if you ask it about cars and they're sponsored by Volkswagen, its output won't include Volkswagen promotional material, right? The ads won't influence the output. They don't say that the output won't influence the ads. They don't say that what you type in won't be used to sell targeted advertising, which is exactly what they're going to do. Same as Facebook. They don't want to sell ads. They want to sell targeted ads. And they can only be targeted if they get their hands on your inputs. And they haven't said they won't use your inputs to inform the advertising. They said they won't sell your data. They don't need your data. They just aggregate and assign you to a group. Male lives here, does this. That's not personal data. And then they sell that to the advertisers, and now you get targeted ads.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to turn us away from being a Black Mirror episode. And
I love it. This is good. You go on.
Let's just look forward a little bit, Mark. I mean, there's a lot of downsides, but looking forward into the role of AI in education, what do people agree on? You talk to a lot of different people in the academic sphere. What do people agree on about where the future's going?
I think that's kind of the key question of how do we move forward, because we need to have common ground around, what we agree on. I think you would struggle to find anyone who doesn't think that Gen AI has not been disruptive to education, higher education, that kind of thing. We know students can use Gen AI to subvert assessments and learning, but even there's not agreement that it's not detectable by software or by humans. There's agreement that students can access Gen AI outside of schools or universities. Obviously, that's kind of a fact, really. It's on phones, that type of thing. And there's also, I think, agreement that, it's also a fact that universities and schools and institutions have responded differently. If you were to snapshot all the responses, they're not all the same. So, we can all agree on that as well.
Yeah.
It pretty much stops around there, though. There's strong consensus for certain things. There's things that are up for debate. There's things that are myths that people just continue to believe that aren't even close to true, like Gen AI works like a search engine, or it searches databases and doesn't spit out probabilistic estimates of tokens. But in terms of agreement, we don't all agree on whether AI can be spotted or detected. We don't all agree on whether assessments as they currently stand need to change. We don't all agree, even at points like Gen AI can produce, expert quality text that is indiscernible from human work. Plenty of people don't believe that.
Yeah.
And because they don't believe that, they don't think there's much of a problem. Because they believe AI can be detected, they don't redesign assessments. So what we all agree on here really does matter. The regulatory advice in Australia has certainly strengthened over time, but I don't think it's a long list of things we agree on. And until we get there, it's going to be difficult and challenging.
Okay, so I think the thing we probably can all agree on, the three of us here, is that our listeners should turn themselves into revolutionaries on campus or in the school. Is go and download the paper, the Heads We Win, Tails You Lose. And if you search for that on Google, I think yours is the first response that comes up. So download copies of that paper, find some of Mark's presentations, print them out, leave them on the printer, leave them in the staff room, leave them wherever you are around campus or around the school, and hope that some of the people that wouldn't be persuaded directly might pick them up. Okay, so that is us done, Dan, for 2026 for talking about AI detectors don't work. We will not say that again in another episode.
No. Yes, we will.
I'd like to say I won't say it again, but
we're gonna have to find
I'm gonna.
New phrasing instead. Yeah. So I think I'm going to go for using an AI detector is about the same effectiveness as using a 50-cent coin, and the 50-cent coin is a lot cheaper.
I like the tarot card analogy as well. That was so good. Yeah. But thank you, Mark, for coming on today. Appreciate all your work and your tenacity in sharing this with our listeners and all the academic community out there. And this is such an important thing. And I think we've always got to be advocates for the students and the academics out there who are getting caught up in that cheating element. Like my son got pinged through Turnitin like almost 2 years ago now when AI first came out. We've heard some horrible stories on our podcast. So thank you for championing this. Thank you for finding out and researching in this area. And it's such an important area for everybody. Thank you.
Oh, thanks for having us on, and thank you for the work you guys do in this podcast. It matters. It has impact. I mean, our paper won the research paper of the year through you guys. There was a couple of people that's like, well, you haven't submitted to a journal. It's not really a real academic award, but this is the one that has impact because this podcast has impact. And I'm far more interested in reaching the common person than readers of academic papers with regard to AI detectors, because these are kids coming home telling their parents they've been accused of using Gen AI and at the kitchen table bawling their eyes out, and they haven't done it. And it's simply unacceptable that they're put through that. And higher educators should know better. But it's not always that simple as just turning it off. The people that may agree with the positions in the paper, maybe they don't have the authority to do so. These decisions are made at a higher level. But I think as we start to see more court cases, this is going to get way too hot to handle. And the risk here to institutions, which I think already exists, is going to go through the roof, and they won't want to go near it.
Well, brings me back to Dad's Army, Dan. You'll remember this. You know, the famous line, don't tell 'em, Pike. Did you use an AI detector? Don't tell 'em, Pike. Thanks very much. See you all next week.